You see the French and the British both jockeying for position, shifting the boundaries of where their own zones of influence actually start.
But for either of the European powers to succeed, they will need the support of the thousands of native peoples who call this land their home.
We often think that native people were not around in great numbers, but in fact during the 18th century they were. And those numbers translated to opportunities. Native people are useful to Europeans.
Without their native allies, the British need someone who knows how to scout the deep woods to gather intelligence behind enemy lines. They turn to Robert Rogers.
It wasn't just a war between two colonial extensions of Europe. It was a war in which there was a very important party, and that was native groups.
For example, Joseph Louis Gill, he's the son of two white captives who becomes one of the best known and best loved Abenaki chiefs to this day. So in terms of on the ground,
it happens at the British Fort William Henry on Lake George. Outnumbered 5-1 and battered for days by the French artillery of General Louis-Joseph de Montcalm, the fort's British and American defenders finally surrender. But Montcalm's Indian allies are furious. They had supported the French in this battle, and they expected to be rewarded with captives and plunder, the customary trophies of victory. They attack the British and Americans who have already surrendered. In the chaos, some are killed and scalped. Others are taken captive. Montcalm has seen this behavior before. He gambled that he could control the Indians. It is a gamble he loses. Who is the equal to Rogers in backwoods fighting? Canadian-born militia leader Langy de Montegron will become Rogers' nemesis for the rest of the war. He is assigned to track down the celebrated ranger and neutralize him. Though the exact method of his getaway has become a matter of legend rather than fact. Near the site of the battle is a 400-foot drop to the surface of Lake George. The story goes that Rogers reached the cliff and somehow slid down it on his snowshoes to the lake to make his escape. Today, the spot is called Rogers Rock.
Whether or not he actually did this or not isn't really the point. The fact that people thought he might even have attempted to do it says a lot about the way in which Rogers was actually seen.
Finally, Abercrombie orders his officers to cease the assault. But the legendary Black Watch, a regiment of Scottish Highlanders, keeps moving forward. They are the only troops that day to get through the French lines. Montcalm is wounded. He'll die within hours. And the young General Wolfe has also suffered a mortal wound. His death was made famous in a heroic painting by Benjamin West, one of the few iconic images to come out of this often overlooked war.
here is a man who, as a child, learned the Abenaki language fluently, had Abenaki friends. He was like one of us. What made him successful militarily is the knowledge he gained from contact with Native people. But he took that knowledge and twisted it around to attack a safe place.
This was something that Rogers had been wanting to do since early in the war. Remember that he had grown up on the frontier. He had suffered the ravages of the Indian raids himself and seen their effects on other people.
A beautiful church, in fact. It had a statue that had come all the way from France of the Virgin. And it was a community that I would describe as quite sophisticated in its way.
At the northern end of the lake, they hide their boats and proceed on foot across more than 100 miles of swamps and woods toward Odanak. But Rogers' constant foe, the French partisan Langy, discovers the hidden boats almost immediately. Some Abenakis defend the village. Others are shot while fleeing. Most of the buildings, including the church, are burned to the ground. Robert Rogers and Langy have one more encounter before the war ends. Once again, most of the Rangers are killed and Rogers slips away. Langy dies soon after, plunging through the ice of the St. Lawrence River. Rogers goes to London and becomes a media star, publishing his exploits and even writing a play sympathetic to Indians.